a millionaire stands on a stage, bathed in the golden light of a perfect California sunset. He raises a glass of champagne, his Patek Philippe watch glittering. He's at the most exclusive vineyard in Napa, hosting a lavish party to celebrate his new fiancée. He takes the microphone to thank her, but he has no idea who he's really thanking. He doesn't know that the woman he betrayed, the ex-wife he thought he destroyed, is listening from the shadows. And he doesn't know that she just bought the very ground he's standing on. Stay tuned as we reveal the ultimate story of love, betrayal, and a contract signed in revenge. The air at Ethelred Estate didn't just feel expensive, it smelled of it. It was a potent, intoxicating blend of old money and new opportunity, a scent Harrison Cole breathed in like oxygen. The late October sun was a perfect brushstroke of apricot and rose gold, painting the rolling vineyards in a light so cinematic it felt staged. And in a way, it was. "Perfection, isn't it?" Harrison murmured, his hand resting possessively on the small of Seraphina Hayes's back. Her dress, a column of shimmering silver Givenchy, felt cool beneath his touch. "It's everything, Harry," Seraphina sighed, leaning her head back onto his shoulder. She looked out over the terrace, where a string quartet was playing Vivaldi, their notes mingling with the sophisticated chatter of California's elite. "I can't believe we're really here. The Ethelred Estate. How did you even get a booking?" "I heard they were reserved 5 years out." Harrison smiled, a tight, confident expression he'd perfected in boardrooms. "I have my ways, my love. Only the best for you." Tonight was not the wedding. It was something almost more important. The engagement party. It was a public declaration, a press release made of flesh, champagne, and $1,000 floral arrangements. It was Harrison Cole, 48, CEO of Cole Innovations, formally presenting his new life, Seraphina, 28, to the world that mattered. And more importantly, it was the final gleaming nail in the coffin of his old life. His old life had a name, Elena. Even thinking her name felt like biting down on a piece of grit. The divorce had been finalized 6 months ago, but the battle had been a brutal 2-year siege. Elena, his wife of 20 years, his college sweetheart, the woman who had, he conceded, helped him build the empire. But she had become difficult, cautious. She lacked his vision. When he'd wanted to risk everything on the new AI logistics mapping software, she'd wanted to diversify. When he'd wanted to acquire, she'd wanted to stabilize. And of course, there was Seraphina. Seraphina was his new head of marketing. She was bright, ambitious, and looked at him not as the man he had been, but as the titan he was. She didn't remember the man who couldn't make payroll in a Silicon Valley garage. She only saw the man who commanded a fleet of private jets. Leaving Elena for her wasn't just an upgrade. In Harrison's mind, it was a necessity, a biological imperative. "Look, the Chandlers are here," Seraphina whispered, giving a little wave. "And is that Governor Newsom?" "He's a friend of a friend," Harrison said dismissively, though his chest puffed out. "Go mingle. I need to speak with the event coordinator. Make sure the 8 to Lafitte is being decanted properly." He kissed her, a public display of ownership, and watched her glide into the crowd, a silver fish in a sea of sharks. Harrison straightened his bespoke Tom Ford jacket. He felt magnificent. He had it all. The company was soaring. The woman on his arm was a goddess. And he was hosting his victory party at the most sought-after venue on the West Coast. He found the event manager, a severe-looking woman named Ms. Davies, standing near the main villa. "Everything is to your satisfaction, Mr. Cole?" she asked, her voice flat, holding a tablet. "It is, Miss Davies. The lighting is superb, the staff is invisible. exactly as I requested." He paused, looking around. "I must say, I was surprised when the date opened up. My assistant said it was a last-minute cancellation." "Something like that," Miss Davies replied, her eyes not quite meeting his. "The estate is under new management, and the new proprietor believes in honoring commitments. Well, good for them. Their old-world way of thinking is costing them a fortune. I'd have paid triple for this date. My fiancée was adamant. Yes, we are aware of your fiancée's preferences," Ms. Davies said. She made a note on her tablet. "The speeches are scheduled for 8 p.m., after the sun has fully set and the terrace lighting is at optimal effect." "Excellent," Harrison said. He was already thinking about his speech. It would be a masterpiece of humility and power. He would thank everyone for coming. He would talk about the future, about new beginnings. And he would toast Serafina, his muse, his savior. He looked back at the party, his life. Everything was finally, perfectly, in its right place. He thought, for a fleeting, petty moment, of Eleanor. He pictured her in her sterile, overpriced condo in Sausalito, probably eating yogurt out of a container and reading legal briefs. He had won. He had won so completely that she was no longer even a player. A waiter walked by, and Harrison snagged a flute of champagne. The bubbles tasted like victory. He didn't notice Miss Davies watching him, her expression unreadable, before she turned and walked silently back toward the main house. He didn't see her tap on the door of the proprietor's private study, push it open, and nod to the woman sitting inside, who was silhouetted against the dying light, looking out over the entire party. 6 months earlier, Elena Vance was not eating yogurt. She was sitting in a glass-walled conference room on the 40th floor of a San Francisco high-rise, staring at the final divorce settlement. The document was an insult, a monument to her own erasure. "He's keeping the Aspen House, the G5, and 95% of the shares in Coal Innovations," she stated, her voice dangerously quiet. "He's allowing me the Sausalito condo, which was my money from my mother's estate, and a one-time payout that wouldn't cover his legal fees for this quarter." Her lawyer, a shark named Marcus, sighed. "Elena, we've been over this. The prenup you signed in 1999 is ironclad. All shares and assets derived from the primary business entity, Coal Innovations, remain the sole property of the founding partner. That's him. You were never named a founder. You were listed as Chief Strategy Officer. An employee." "An employee," she repeated. The word tasted like ash. She remembered the nights, sleeping on a cot in that garage office, coding the original back-end logistics for Coal Innovations, while Harrison, charming, magnetic Harrison, was out raising seed money. She remembered cashing in her own inheritance to make their first payroll. She remembered the 2008 crash, when she was the one who found the new market pivot that saved them from bankruptcy, while Harrison was having panic attacks in his home office. "He called me his partner for 20 years, she whispered. "And then he hired Serafina Hayes," Marcus said, not unkindly. "And suddenly you weren't." The betrayal wasn't just the affair. That was common, mundane. The betrayal was the systematic precision with which he had cut her out. For the last 3 years of their marriage, while he was wooing Serafina, he had been working with his legal team to restructure the company. He'd created a new parent corporation, transferred the key patents, and diluted the original stock, her stock, into worthlessness. He had used her own strategies against her. She had been left with nothing but the condo, a respectable but hollow bank account, and a name that was no longer linked to the empire she had built. Elena Vance. Not Elena Cole. She had taken back her maiden name with a vengeance. "He thinks I'm finished," she said, finally looking up from the paper. Her eyes were not sad. They were clear, cold, and brilliant. "He thinks I'm going to go away. Open a little art gallery, join a charity board. He thinks I'm decorous." "What are you going to do?" Marcus asked. "I'm going to liquidate," she said. "The condo, the art, the jewelry, the bonds, everything he let me have. I want the total number by tomorrow." "And then?" "And then," Elena said, standing up, "you're going to set up a new shell corporation for me. Delaware, opaque. Call it Vance Holdings." "I'm no longer in the business of strategy, Marcus. I'm in the business of acquisition." For the next 3 months, Elena vanished. She didn't answer calls from mutual friends. She deleted her social media. She worked. She moved into a small rented apartment, a new office, a Spartan room with 3 monitors. She didn't sleep. She just hunted. She watched Harrison, not as an ex-wife, but as a rival CEO. She tracked Cole Innovations' stock. She read his quarterly reports. She tracked his public appearances, and she tracked his new fiancée. She saw the gushing posts. Serafina flashing a 12-carat diamond. Serafina on the Cole jet. Serafina at a gala with the caption, "My brilliant man just secured the deal of the decade." And then she found it. A small society blog post about Serafina's bridal shower. A source close to the bride says she has her heart set on a wedding at the legendary Ethelred estate in Napa. It's an impossible dream, but we hear her billionaire fiancé loves a challenge, Ethelred estate. Elena's blood went cold. It was their place, the place they had visited on their 10th anniversary, back when they were still partners, still them. They had stood on that very terrace, and Harrison had kissed her. "One day, Elle," he'd promised, "I'm going to buy you this. We'll grow old here." It was the one promise he'd made that held a shred of romance, and now he was giving it to her. Elena's hands flew across the keyboard. She wasn't just a strategist. She was a world-class researcher. She dug past the glossy front page of the Ethelred website. She went into county records, financial statements, and creditor reports. And she found the truth. Ethelred estate was not exclusive, it was dying. The previous owner, a third-generation vintner, had made a series of terrible investments and was leveraged to the hilt. The vineyard was facing foreclosure. It was in receivership, the sale being handled quietly by a bank in Zurich to prevent a public panic that would devalue the brand. They needed a buyer, a silent buyer, and they needed one now. Elena picked up her phone. "Marcus, I've found my acquisition. Get me the bank in Zurich. I'm prepared to make an all-cash offer, 20% over their asking price. There is one condition. The sale must be absolutely silent, and my name must be attached to nothing." "Elena, this is your whole settlement," Marcus said, his voice tight with alarm. "I know," she said, watching the stock ticker for Cole Innovations climb. "It's a start." The deal was a masterwork of speed and silence. The Zurich bank, representing the creditors, was desperate. The Ethelred brand was toxic in financial circles, but its public-facing image was still pristine. A public foreclosure auction would destroy the vineyard's multi-million-dollar booking schedule and render the brand worthless. Elena's offer, coming from the anonymous Vance Holdings, was a lifeline. She imposed 3 conditions. First, the sale was non-negotiable and all cash, closing in 10 business days. This was blindingly fast for a property of this magnitude. Second, the entire existing staff, from the vintners to the event coordinators, was to be retained. She wasn't buying a property, she was buying an operational fortress. Third, and most critical, The sale would be sealed. The bank, the lawyers, and the previous owner would sign a non-disclosure agreement so restrictive it bordered on unconstitutional. No press releases. No change to the public-facing proprietor on the website. To the world, Ethelred Estate was simply continuing. While Harrison Cole's assistant was calling the Ethelred booking office, begging for a date, Elena Vance was on a video call with the vineyard's general manager, Ms. Davies. "Let me be clear," Elena said, her face calm and professional on the screen. "Your jobs are secure. Your salaries are being increased by 10%, effective immediately. The pension fund will be fully restored. All I require in return is absolute, unwavering loyalty." Ms. Davies, a woman who had worked at Ethelred for 30 years and had watched the previous owner drink himself into ruin, felt a wave of relief so profound she nearly wept. "Madam," she said, her voice thick, "you have it. What do you need?" "I need to know about Harrison Cole's booking." A shadow crossed Ms. Davies's face. "Yes, his assistant has been aggressive. They are requesting October 25th for a large-scale engagement party. We are, of course, telling them we are booked." "No," Elena said. "You will not. You will call his assistant back in 1 hour. You will tell them there has been a miraculous cancellation. A European prince has postponed his wedding. The date is theirs." Ms. Davies frowned. "But why? Why would you want him here?" "Mr. Cole and I are old acquaintances," Elena said, a microscopic smile touching her lips. "He believes he is getting the impossible booking. He is paying a premium, of course." "A 200% premium as you instructed," Ms. Davies confirmed. "Good, he's paying that premium to me. He is funding, with his own arrogance, the restoration of the very vineyard he's renting. I want him to have everything he wants. The 82 Lafitte, the Wagyu beef, the fireworks." "The fireworks permit for that date is difficult," Ms. Davies said. "Then make it difficult," Elena instructed. "Let him know it's pending, that it's a problem. Let him and his team stress about it. But make sure, in the end, it is approved. It just needs one final signature on the day of the event." "Whose signature?" "The new proprietor's, of course," Elena said. "It has to be a wet signature, on site. County rules. Very archaic, very firm." "I understand," Ms. Davies said, a new light of understanding dawning in her eyes. This was not a business transaction. This was a chess move. "One more thing, Ms. Davies. The wine selection. Mr. Cole has requested a specific list of high-end Napa Cabernets. I want you to add one to the list, a complimentary tasting for the head table. Ethelred's own 2005 reserve. It was a small batch, never sold commercially. It's in the private cellar, C Wing, bin 112. I'm not familiar with that vintage," Ms. Davies confessed. "I am," Elena said softly. "It was a custom bottling, a gift for an anniversary. The cork is sealed with dark blue wax. See to it personally." "Yes, madam." When the call ended, Elena sat back. The purchase had taken every cent she had. She was, on paper, poorer than she had been the day she'd met Harrison Cole. But she owned the field. For the next 2 months, she worked from the shadows. She poured capital, Harrison's capital, routed through Vance Holdings, into the estate. She paid the creditors. She restored the equipment. She gave the staff a sense of pride they hadn't felt in years. And then, she waited. She watched as Harrison's planners descended. She read their arrogant emails and their endless, detailed demands. She approved every single one. She wanted the stage to be set perfectly. She wanted the lights to be bright. She wanted the audience to be packed. She wanted him to be at the absolute, dizzying peak of his triumph when she finally introduced herself as the sponsor. The night of October 25th arrived. A line of Rolls-Royces, Bentleys and Teslas snaked its way up the long, cypress-lined drive to the Ethelred villa. The valets, wearing the Vineyard's smart grey uniforms, moved with military precision. The party was a sea of glittering, chattering success. Harrison Cole was in his element, his arm welded to Seraphina's waist. He accepted congratulations with a magnanimous air, as if he had personally invented champagne. "Harrison, my boy, quite the coup." Arthur Cole, Harrison's father, clapped him on the shoulder. Arthur was old-world steel. He wore his wealth with the comfortable silence of a man who had never had to earn it, and he had always, to Harrison's annoyance, had a soft spot for Elena. "Good to see you, father," Harrison said. "Glad you could make it. Wouldn't miss it. Though I must say, this place—" Arthur looked around, his sharp blue eyes taking in the details. "It always felt more like Elena's style than yours, Harrison. She had the palette. You just had the checkbook." "Eleanor is the past, father," Harrison said, his voice hardening. "Seraphina is the future. Try to enjoy it." Seraphina, meanwhile, was holding court with her friends, a trio of influencers and socialites. "Sarah, my God, this is insane," said Tiffany, her best friend, taking a selfie with a $1,000 floral arrangement. "He really loves you. My ex just got me a Lexus." "A Lexus?" I was mortified. "He's wonderful," Seraphina said, but her smile was a fraction too tight. She felt a persistent, gnawing insecurity. She had won. She had the ring. She had the man. She had the vineyard. So why did she feel like an imposter? Why did every compliment feel like it was secretly a comparison to the woman who had come before? She caught sight of Harrison's father, Arthur, watching her from across the terrace. He wasn't smiling. He looked disappointed. She quickly turned away, grabbing another glass of champagne. "I need to find Harrison," she said suddenly. I need to see him." She found him near the orchestra, arguing with Miss Davies. "What do you mean it's not signed?" Harrison was demanding, his voice a low growl. "My assistant was assured the fireworks permit was handled." "As I explained to your assistant, Mr. Cole, the county requires the proprietor's signature on the day of the event," Miss Davies said, her face a mask of polite obstruction. "It's a final liability waiver. The new owner is meticulous." "This is absurd. I am paying you a fortune. Get them on the phone. Get them here. I don't care. I promised my fiancée fireworks." "That won't be necessary, Mr. Cole. The owner is on site this evening." Harrison was taken aback. "On site? During my party? How unprofessional. Where are they? In the basement?" "She is in the proprietor's study, sir, reviewing the Q4 projections. She will be available at 8 p.m. to sign the permit, just before the scheduled display." "She?" Harrison's eyebrows shot up. Fine. Just handle it, Davies, and send another case of the Lafitte to the main bar. My guests are drinking like fish." He turned, annoyed, and nearly ran into Seraphina. "Harry, darling," she said, plastering on a bright smile. "Is everything okay?" "Everything is perfect, my love," he said, his public face snapping back into place. He wrapped his arm around her. "Just a minor logistical snag. The staff here is a little provincial, but don't you worry about a thing." He steered her toward the center of the terrace, where a small stage and lectern had been set up. The sun had finally dipped below the Mayakamas Mountains, and the world was a deep twilight blue. The orchestrated lighting flared to life, illuminating the terrace like a Hollywood set. "Ladies and gentlemen," Harrison's voice boomed, silenced by a microphone. "If I could have your attention." The crowd quieted, turning toward the stage. In the proprietor's study, A dark, oak-panelled room overlooking the entire scene, Elena Vance stood up. She had been watching the party through the floor-to-ceiling windows. She had watched Arthur Cole's barely concealed disdain. She had watched Seraphina's desperate, brittle smiles. And she had watched Harrison, preening like a peacock. Miss Davies entered the room silently. "It's 8 p.m., madam. His speech is starting." "Thank you, Miss Davies," Elena said. She picked up a single sheet of paper from the 18th century desk, the fireworks permit. "And the wine?" "The 2005 reserve, with the blue wax seal, was just delivered to his table," Miss Davies confirmed. "Good." Eleanor smoothed the front of her simple, devastatingly elegant black Armani dress. She was not dressed as a guest. She was dressed for business. "Shall I have security accompany you?" Elena shook her head. "No, this isn't a confrontation, Miss Davies. It's a simple, administrative task." She walked out of the study and down the short hall to the terrace, her heels making no sound on the thick runners. She paused in the archway, hidden in the shadow, just as Harrison raised his glass. "Welcome," Harrison began, his voice amplified, rolling across the vineyards. He was radiant, a king addressing his court. "Welcome all of you to this incredible, incredible night." Polite applause. "When I decided to start a new chapter in my life," he continued, glancing at Seraphina, who looked up at him with pure adoration. "I knew it had to be perfect. I knew I had to find a partner who wasn't just my equal, but my inspiration. A woman who understood that the future belongs to those who are bold enough to seize it." In the shadows, Elena felt a cold laugh bubble in her chest. Bold enough to seize it. That was what he called his corporate theft. "And I found that woman," Harrison boomed. "My fiancée, the beautiful, the brilliant Seraphina Hayes." The crowd erupted in cheers. Seraphina visibly teared up, blowing him a kiss. Harrison drank it in, letting the applause wash over him. "I wanted this night, our first public night, to be a symbol of that future," he went on, gesturing expansively. "I wanted us to be surrounded by the best friends." He nodded to the crowd. "The best wine," he held up his glass, "and the best, most beautiful setting in the world." He paused for dramatic effect. And what better place to celebrate that future than here, at Ethelred Estate, the most beautiful vineyard in Napa? More applause. Harrison's smile was a mile wide. He was at the absolute peak. This was his moment. "I have to tell you," he laughed, "my wonderful Seraphina had her heart set on this place, and anyone who knows me knows. I get what I want. I wanted the best for you, my love. And I got it." This was the cue. As Harrison basked in the glow of his own magnanimity, Miss Davies stepped forward from the side of the stage. She moved with quiet, unhurried purpose. Harrison, seeing her, faltered for a second, his smile tightening. "Yes? What is it?" he hissed through his teeth, covering the mic. "The 8 p.m. signature, Mr. Cole," Miss Davies said, her voice just loud enough for him to hear. She was holding a leather folio. "The fireworks permit. The owner is here, as requested." "What? Now? I'm in the middle of a speech," he whispered furiously. "It's the only time she has, sir. Liability, you understand." Miss Davies stepped up onto the low stage and placed the open folio on the lectern, right over Harrison's speech notes. Inside, the county permit was clearly visible, with a yellow "Sign Here" sticker pointing to a blank line. "This is—" Fine, Harrison stammered, his rhythm broken. The crowd was watching, a confused murmur starting. Where is she? Have her sign it." "She's right here, sir." Miss Davies turned and looked directly into the archway. Eleanor Vance stepped out of the shadow and into the light. The string quartet, cued by Miss Davies, had just finished a piece. In the resulting silence, the only sound was the click, click, click of Eleanor's heels on the stone terrace as she approached the stage. The crowd went utterly, completely still. Serafina's face, which had been a mask of bridal bliss, froze and shattered. "Elena," she breathed. Harrison's blood turned to ice water. He stared, his mouth slightly open, the microphone still live in his hand. He looked like he had seen a ghost, a very well-dressed, very composed ghost. "Elena, what are you doing here?" he finally managed to say. The microphone carried his stunned, shaky voice to every corner of the terrace. "This is a private party. Get her out of here." Elena didn't look at him. She didn't look at Serafina. She walked past them, directly to the lectern. "Good evening, Harrison," she said, her voice cool and clear. She picked up the platinum-plated pen that was attached to the folio. "Miss Davies, thank you for handling this." She bent over the lectern and, with a smooth, practiced flourish, signed her name, Elena Vance. She then straightened up, closed the folio, and handed it to Miss Davies. "Allow me, Harrison," she said, her gaze finally locking on his. Her voice was calm, but it cut through the night air like a diamond. "The staff knows my signature is the only one that matters here." Harrison just stared, non-comprehending. "What? What did you sign? What are you talking about?" Eleanor turned from him and faced the audience of shocked faces. She took the microphone from his limp, unresisting hand. "Welcome, everyone," she said, her voice resonating with a power Harrison had forgotten it possessed. "Welcome to my vineyard." The silence that followed was so profound that the sound of a single champagne flute shattering on the terrace echoed like a gunshot. Serafina was the first to break. "No," she gasped, her hand flying to her throat. "No, that's not. Harry, what is she doing? Make her stop!" Harrison was paralyzed. His brain, usually so quick, was short-circuiting. "Elena, this isn't funny. This is trespassing. I'll have you arrested." Elena raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Arrested? For what, Harrison? Signing the payroll? Checking the inventory? Or perhaps for approving the very expensive fireworks display you're about to enjoy?" She turned back to the crowd, who were now leaning in, a frantic, hungry energy replacing their shock. This was better than gossip. This was a blood sport. "I do apologize for the interruption," Elena continued, her tone that of a gracious host. "Please, enjoy the party. But I feel I must clarify. Harrison's lovely speech. He's always been wonderful at grand gestures, but a little fuzzy on the details." "Elena, stop it!" Harrison snarled, finally finding his voice. He lunged for the microphone, but she sidestepped him easily, holding it out of his reach. "He's right," she said, "when he says Ethelred Estate is the best. It is. Which is why, when it quietly went into receivership 60 days ago, I felt it was a worthy passion project. Vance Holdings, my new venture, closed the sale last Tuesday." A collective gasp went through the crowd. Arthur Cole, Harrison's father, was now standing. He wasn't looking at his son. He was looking at Elena with a look of pure, unadulterated awe. You're lying!" Serafina shrieked, her mask of perfection finally cracking, revealing the raw panic beneath. "This is our night. You're just a bitter old... You did this to ruin me!" Elena finally turned her full attention to Serafina. Her gaze was not angry. It was almost pitying. "Ruin you? My dear, I just signed your fireworks permit. Why would I do that if I wanted to ruin your party?" She smiled, a small, tight smile. "I'm not your rival. I'm your vendor. And you, Harrison," she said, turning back to him, "are my client. A C-list client at that. Your check for the deposit was late. The humiliation was a physical force, washing over Harrison in waves. He was white as a sheet. His business partners were staring. The governor's friend was already backing discreetly toward the exit. "Why?" Harrison whispered, his voice cracking, all pretense of power gone. "Why would you do this?" "You're standing in it, Harrison," she said, gesturing to the vineyard. "This was our dream. The one we had on our 10th anniversary, standing on this very terrace. Or had you forgotten that, too?" She let that hang in the air. Harrison's face told everyone he had, indeed, forgotten. "But you're right," Elena said, her voice softening just a fraction. "This isn't just about an old memory. This is a business transaction, a correction, if you will." She looked out at the guests, her eyes finding every key investor and partner Harrison had. "When Cole Innovations restructured last year," she said, her voice ringing with clarity, "my shares, the shares I earned building the company for 20 years, were diluted into nothing. A clever legal maneuver. Harrison called it seizing the future. I called it theft." She looked back at him. "I had to find a new way to fund my retirement, and as it turns out, I didn't need to. You see, Harrison, you paid for this. Every dime you've spent on this party, the 200% premium on the venue, the absurd fee for the 82 Lafitte, the imported flowers, it hasn't been going to Ethelred Estate. It's been going directly into the primary account of Vance Holdings, my account." She set the microphone down on the lectern. "You didn't just rent this vineyard, Harrison. You paid for its restoration. You funded my acquisition. This is my severance package, the one you neglected to give me." She looked at her watch. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to check on the catering. The standards have been slipping, and I simply won't have it." She stepped off the stage, leaving Harrison and Serafina standing alone, frozen in the spotlight, in the middle of a party that was now, unequivocally, over. Elena did not run. She did not flee. She walked, with the unhurried grace of an owner, from the terrace into the main villa, disappearing into the private wing. On the terrace the silence broke, replaced by a sound Harrison Cole had never heard directed at him. Laughter. It started as a snicker from a rival CEO, then a muffled giggle from a socialite. Within seconds, the entire party was a cacophony of frantic, gleeful whispers. People weren't just witnessing a scandal, they were part of it. Phones were out, not held up to film, but held down, thumbs flying. Harrison Cole, publicly castrated by his ex-wife. She owns it. She owns the whole vineyard. Did you see his face? Serafina was the first to move. She made a choked, sobbing sound and ran, a full, unglamorous sprint in her Givenchy dress, off the terrace and toward the valets. "Get me the car! Get me the car!" she screamed. Harrison was left alone. He looked at the lectern. He looked at the crowd. He saw his father, Arthur, who simply shook his head, turned, and walked away. The party's not over," Harrison mumbled into the live microphone, a pathetic, hollow sound. But it was. The exodus was immediate. The valets were instantly overwhelmed. It was a stampede of the 1%. Harrison finally stumbled off the stage, his legs like jelly. His lawyers, a team of 3, were already huddled, speaking in rapid, panicked tones. "She can't do this! This is entrapment!" Harrison raged, grabbing the senior partner, John. "Harrison, shut up!" John snapped, pulling him into a dark corner. "Just shut up! Did you know she was the owner? Of course not. Do you think I'd be... She's not just the owner, Harrison. She's the creditor. You signed a venue contract. You've been paying her. This isn't illegal, Harrison. It's just spectacularly humiliating. Sue her. Slander. Defamation. On what grounds? John shot back. Did she lie? She said she owned the property. She does. She said you paid her. You did. She said you diluted her shares. You bragged about that in your Forbes interview, you idiot. You called it agile restructuring. She just translated it. The full weight of it hit Harrison. This wasn't a social faux pas. This was a corporate kill shot. He had built his new reputation on being untouchable, a visionary, the man who always won. And in one 5-minute speech, his ex-wife had reduced him to a punchline. She had used his own arrogance as the weapon. He saw Miss Davies directing staff to collect the untouched glasses of champagne. He stormed over to her. "Where is she?" he demanded. "Where is Elena?" "The proprietor is in her study, Mr. Cole. She is not to be disturbed," Miss Davies said, without a flicker of emotion. Harrison ignored her, pushing past and storming into the villa. He slammed open the door to the study. Elena was sitting behind the large mahogany desk, a glass of wine in her hand. She looked up, unsurprised. "The fireworks were cancelled, Harrison," she said calmly. "It seems the guests of honor left. I'm afraid you'll have to forfeit your deposit on those." You snake," he seethed, his hands balling into fists. "All this elaborate, vindictive play, all for revenge?" Elena took a slow sip of her wine. She looked at him, and for the first time, he saw she wasn't angry. She wasn't even smug. She was tired. "Revenge?" she said, setting the glass down. "No, Harrison. This wasn't for revenge. This was for me. You spent 2 years trying to convince me I was nothing, that I was a cautious old woman holding you back. You built your entire new life on the idea that I was the past. You told the world you were the innovator. You erased me." She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the last of the cars fleeing her property. "I didn't do this to ruin you. You did this to yourself. You were so blinded by your own ego, so desperate to show off for your new life, that you didn't even think to ask who owned the most exclusive property in Napa. You didn't do an ounce of due diligence. You, the great Harrison Cole, signed a multi-million-dollar contract with an anonymous shell company. You just assumed the world would bend to your will. This," she said, turning back to him, "wasn't a play. This was a diagnosis. I just wanted to see if the man I married was still in there, or if the legend he'd built had eaten him alive. It seems I have my answer." "So what now, Elena?" he spat. "You've had your fun. You've humiliated me. You'll sell this place, take your profit and—" "What?" Elena laughed, a real, genuine laugh that startled him. "Sell? Harrison, you still don't get it. You think this was the end of the plan? This was the funding. This was phase 1. I'm not a scorned wife, Harrison. I'm a businesswoman, and I'm just getting started." The story wasn't just on news feeds. It was a global detonation. By 8 a.m. the next morning, Das Ethelred ambush was trending worldwide. Vineyard Vengeance, CEO's ex serves revenge cold. The toast heard round the valley. Stock plummets as Cole's new life implodes. The financial papers were the most brutal. They didn't care about the jilted love story. They cared about the numbers. They ran scathing analyses of Harrison's ego-driven liability and catastrophic lack of due diligence. Gossip blogs in parallel posted blurry, zoomed-in photos of Serafina, her face a mask of mascara-streaked horror, sprinting for the valet. Cole. In didn't just plummet 18%. It triggered a circuit breaker halt in the first 5 minutes of trading. When it reopened, it fell another 10%, wiping out billions in market cap. Harrison Cole, the visionary, was now Harrison Cole, the man who paid his ex-wife millions to publicly execute him. He was locked in a war room in his San Francisco office. But it wasn't a war room, it was a morgue. His lawyers and his PR team, all billing him thousands per hour, just stared at him. "There is no spin, Harrison," his PR chief, a woman named Julia, finally yelled, throwing her tablet on the table. "You can't reframe this. You were arrogant, you were sloppy, and you got gutted in front of your entire peer group. The board is calling for an emergency meeting. They're not just concerned. They're talking about the key man clause. They think you're a reputational liability." "Fix it," he roared, his voice hoarse, his face blotchy and pale. "Fix what?" John, his lawyer, shot back. "Your reputation. It's gone. The stock? It's in freefall. This isn't a legal problem, Harrison. You didn't get defamed. You got owned. Literally. She's not just your ex-wife. She's your landlord, and you're the tenant who just got evicted in front of the whole neighborhood." And Serafina, she had made it to Cabo, but it wasn't an escape. It was an exile. Her phone, which had once been her lifeline, was now a weapon against her. She was a meme, the fumbled fiancée, silver dresser. The influencers who had kissed her cheek at the party were now posting, "So glad I'm not her," think pieces, distancing themselves. She had hitched her wagon to a Titan, only to find he was a hollow statue. The silver Givenchy dress was in a heap on the floor of her 5,000 a night hotel suite, a shimmering, expensive shroud. She wasn't just humiliated, she was irrelevant. She was a footnote in Eleanor's story. While they were spiraling, Eleanor was consolidating. She gave no interviews. She didn't need to. The world was telling her story for her. She let the fire burn, fueled by Harrison's own reputation. At Ethelred, she was a hero. The staff, who had lived in fear of the old owner's creditors, now worked with a fierce, protective loyalty. Miss Davies fielded hundreds of press calls, all with the same crisp reply. "Mrs. Vance is currently in strategy meetings. She is unavailable for comment." Ethelred Estate itself became the hottest ticket on the planet. The Eleanor's revenge package wasn't just in demand, it was a cultural phenomenon. Corporations were booking it for their own hostile takeover celebrations. A group of female divorce lawyers booked the terrace for their annual retreat. It was morbid, it was brilliant, and it was pouring pure liquid profit directly into Vance Holdings. Then, 1 week after the party, Elena accepted one invitation. Not Forbes, not Vanity Fair. She appeared at the Stanford Graduate School of Business at the annual Women in Entrepreneurship Summit. When her name was announced as the surprise keynote, the stunned silence in the auditorium was followed by a standing ovation that lasted for 3 full minutes. She walked on stage, not in a cocktail dress, but in an elegant, professional Armani suit. She looked like what she was, a CEO. "For 20 years, she began, her voice steady and warm, "I was the silent partner, the woman behind the man. A story I'm sure many of you know well. My strategies built an empire, but my name was not on the door. And when it came time to restructure," she paused, and a small, knowing laugh went through the audience. "Well, let's just say I was diluted and left to pursue other interests." The crowd laughed with her. "This is not a unique story," she continued, her voice gaining power. "It's an epidemic. Women who build, who code, who strategize, who sacrifice, only to be told their contributions are soft or to be phased out when their vision is no longer convenient for a male-led board. Today," she said, "I am announcing the Vance Initiative." The logo appeared on the giant screen behind her. Simple, strong, Vance. My recent financial activities have been quite successful. The audience roared with laughter and applause. Using the full and now considerable profits from my holdings, including the Ethelred estate, the Vance Initiative is a new venture capital fund. But we don't fund 20-year-old men in hoodies. We don't fund disruptors who want to make a new food delivery app. We fund founders. We fund experience. This fund, she declared, her voice ringing with passion, is dedicated exclusively to funding women over 40, women who have been restructured, pensioned off, or bought out of the companies they helped build. We are a fund for the women who are told they are the past, when they are, in fact, the future. The room exploded. This was not a revenge plot. This was a manifesto. Elena Vance hadn't just won a battle, she had launched a new war. The Vance Initiative became the biggest story in business, eclipsing the gossip. Elena was no longer the ex-wife. She was the matriarch of Napa, a new, powerful VC who was actively poaching the best female talent that companies like Cole Innovations had overlooked. The final domino fell 3 months later. Harrison Cole was formally and humiliatingly voted out by his own board, forced to step down as CEO and take the Chairman Emeritus title, a public neutering. The man he'd chosen to replace him, a slick yes-man named Robert, was floundering. The company was rudderless, a ship Harrison had built and then scuttled with his own hubris. Elena was in her study at Ethelred. The room was no longer dark and oak. She had renovated it, and it was now filled with light, glass, and blueprints for the new Vance Initiative campus she was building on the property. Her phone rang, an unsaved number. She answered, "Vance?" A long silence. Then, "Elena?" The voice was a ghost, weak, thin, stripped of all its baritone confidence. It was Harrison. It's Harrison. Cole." "I know who you are, Harrison," she said, her voice perfectly neutral, as she signed off on a new winery equipment purchase. "Listen, Elena. I'm not with the company. Anymore. Not really. But the board, the stock is in the gutter. They're talking about a hostile takeover from a private equity firm in Singapore. It's going to be broken up, Elena. Sold for parts. Our company. He was trying to use the we. She could hear the desperation, the complete, pathetic collapse of the Titan. "I see that," she said, her voice cool. "The quarterly reports are public. I need you," he whispered, and she could hear the hitch in his breath. "I need your help. They'll listen to you. If you came back as a consultant, just to stabilize things, like you used to. I will pay you anything. Name your price. Any price." Elena looked out the window. The grapes for the next harvest were full and purple on the vines. She could hear the sound of her staff, her people, working and laughing in the vineyard. She thought of the 20 women whose new companies she had just funded. Companies that were already turning profits, already innovating, already building new empires. She leaned back in her chair. The power imbalance was total, final. "Harrison," she said, and her voice was not unkind. It was not angry. It was just done. 20 years ago, my price was partnership. My price was respect. You couldn't afford it then, and you certainly can't afford it now. Elena, please, I'm begging you. I have nothing." "You have exactly what you left me with," she corrected him. "Only I knew what to do with it." She paused, then delivered the final, clean cut. "I'm afraid my consultation dance card is full, Harrison. I'm investing in the future, not in relics." She pressed end on the call, severing the last, pathetic thread to the man who had tried to erase her. She took a sip of her wine, a 2025 vintage from a harvest she had overseen, and turned her attention back to the stack of business plans from the next round of founders. She had work to do, and so Harrison Cole learned the hard way. Never underestimate the woman you wrote off. Elena Vance didn't just get revenge, she got justice. She didn't just take back her legacy, she used it to build a new one for countless other women. She proved that the past he tried to bury was actually the foundation for her entire future. What do you think of Eleanor's ultimate power move? Was it brilliant? Was it cold? Or was it the perfect correction for a man who had it all and forgot who helped him get it? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. This story is a testament to resilience, strategy, and knowing your own worth, even when someone else tries to write you out of the script. If you loved this story of drama, betrayal, and ultimate triumph, please hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories you won't be able to forget. Thanks for listening.